Some people think that once trust is broken, it can never be recovered again. But is that really true? In this video today, we'll look at what we can do to rebuild trust and rebuild relationships once it's been broken. For the purposes of this video today, most of the examples will focus around intimate relationships, but if you're watching this and looking to rebuild trust in other types of relationships, such as other family relationships or friendships, then the content will still be relevant. Before figuring out the path forward after a breach of trust or a betrayal, it is important to look at the type of breach that's occurred, as not all breaches of trust are in the same category. For example, a one-time breach versus a long-term pattern, an ongoing repeated pattern, are going to be addressed very differently, with the long-term pattern very hard to come back from. But there's also the type of deception or the type of betrayal, which could come into the category of neglect or infidelity or a boundary violation or an abandonment or a deception, a lie. And the rebuilding depends on the nature of these types of deceptions and whether the other person obviously is willing to repair the dynamic as well. So I would say it's not black and white. Sometimes we have a mentality, or some people will have the mentality, that you've broken my trust now, I can't trust you for anything. Well, that's a story you can tell yourself. That's a thought you can have. And I would suggest that if your reaction is going to be that strong that's probably more from a one-off breach in trust, for example, that it's reflective of something deeper going on inside you that is making it such a black and white line that you've drawn around not being able to trust that other individual at all now that a breach has occurred. It's really important also to look at whether there really was an intention to betray the trust. So for example, maybe you feel abandoned by the individual because they didn't, check in on you, and they should have known that you were feeling emotionally fragile or unwell and didn't call you for a day or two, and that is the breach of trust. That individual may have had a different perception as to what was going on for you, and therefore to throw it in the category of someone not having any trustworthy qualities because of a careless moment or a difference in perception is quite different to someone who deliberately went out to hide something from you. And again, if you're putting them all in the same category, that would be more of an indication that there's some deeper insecurities inside you that need looking at. And so that is one of the key things. It's always important to look at your own history when you feel triggered by a betrayal of trust. What is the hurt inside of you? What exactly has been activated? Does it feel similar? Does it feel familiar to other breaches of trust? Does it remind you of memories that had a similar feeling, or certain people in your life that created a similar feeling? I guess on the other side, as far as the person that's breached the trust, is that trust is not automatically regained and cannot be demanded by that other individual. Sometimes it may be tempting for the other person to say, well, if you're going to forgive me and stay with me and have this relationship as an ongoing thing, then you've got to trust me. You can continue with the relationship or friendship, but there's no automatic switch that puts the trust back on again. And obviously actions speak louder than words over time, and that's going to be the key thing, that the other individual is being accountable, that they are communicating clearly, they are respecting potential changes in boundaries. If all that's going on, then there's cause for hope that the trust can be rebuilt. It's also important to be aware that the rebuild of trust is a two-way process. It's not all about the other person having to prove it to you, having to earn it through changing their behavior and being checked up on constantly. In fact, that will never work in the long term if there's a sense that you have to continually monitor the other person and keep an eye on them so that they don't fall into the same trap again. That is not a rebuild of trust. That is a clear sign that the trust is not there. And if it cannot move to a situation at some point where that person is allowed to live their life without being monitored, then there's cause to believe that the friendship or relationship has changed forever. But that's not necessary, because if the individual who has created the betrayal has turned things around and there's evidence that they have taken it very seriously, and it's just you as the one who was hurt that is struggling, then there's cause for you to do the inner work on the parts that have been wounded or trying to protect you from further hurts. This may seem really unfair, that you have to do healing as a result of someone else. But it is your responsibility to do your healing. The other person cannot do it for you. It is never going to be the case that it's all on the other person. And if you think that that's the way that it has to go, that it's all on them, then the trust will not be rebuilt. The inner work must unfold on the behalf of the individual who's been hurt as well. And for me, it's doing the parts work. It's using the internal family systems model as a way of finding the parts that have been reactivated, the wounded parts like inner child parts, or the protectors that are now got the wall up, and those protective parts thinking they have to maintain that wall for fear of it happening again. And when they're honoured and respected and thanked for their efforts, these protective parts and the parts that have been re-wounded are nurtured and supported, your system, your inner world can return to a state of rebalance and giving a chance for this relationship to come online again. Although, in truth, it's going to be a different relationship. Not the same relationship, not going back to normal. It's going to be a new relationship. And so some practices that, other than doing the parts work to enhance your process and getting to a situation of self-trust, because regardless of whether you're going to continue with that relationship or friendship, then being able to trust that you can have other relationships moving forward that aren't contaminated by that person's betrayal is vitally important. And so processes like journaling to figure out what feelings and aspects of yourselves or aspects of yourself are hurting and struggling. As I said, the parts work, and listening to your intuition as well, honouring your intuition. The feeling of, is there a path forward here? That subtlety in the background that is letting you know whether there can be a path forward, whether the other person really has taken it seriously and made a shift. And it's also about keeping those promises to yourself. If you said, I'll give it 6 months to let it rebuild, well then jumping on top of the other person and not giving the space for things to improve isn't sticking to that promise to yourself. Equally, in the reverse, if things haven't improved after a period of time and you said that you would give it a certain period of time to see if changes were going to unfold and they haven't, then being brave enough to walk away is important. And as I said before, it's not about going back to normal. It's about creating a new normal, a new, more honest normal within the dynamic between you and this other individual. It's a powerful opportunity for growth and healing. So from a deeper perspective, it really is a chance, a catalyst for the deeper awakening of parts that need to evolve within you, to become stronger, wiser, more authentic. And you can ask yourself, what has this experience taught me? And as far as a relationship goes, is this relationship still aligned with my higher soul path? What deeper truths about love and self-respect are being revealed here? So in truth, broken trust may be just one of the greatest gifts you can receive for your soul's evolution. Thanks for watching.